If you have plans to travel to the United States or you're waiting for a visa approval, what I'm about to tell you in the next few minutes could completely change everything. President Trump just announced sweeping new visa bans and travel restrictions in January 2026 that are already causing chaos at airports and consulates worldwide. Whether you're a student, a worker, a tourist, or someone with family in America, you need to hear this right now because the window to act is closing fast. Welcome to US Visa Info, your most trusted source for breaking immigration news and visa updates. I'm here to give you the complete breakdown of President Trump's newly announced visa ban and travel restrictions that took effect in January 2026. This is not speculation. This is not rumor. These are official policy changes that are already being implemented at U.S. embassies, consulates, and ports of entry across the world. I'm going to walk you through exactly what these restrictions are, who they affect, which countries are on the banned list, what visa categories are impacted, and most importantly, what you can do right now to protect your travel plans and immigration status. Make sure you stay until the very end because I'll share critical steps you must take immediately if you're affected by these changes. Let's get straight into it. On January 20th, 2026, just hours after returning to office, President Trump signed a series of executive orders reinstating and expanding travel bans that had been lifted by the previous administration. The announcement sent shockwaves through the immigration community because these restrictions go far beyond what anyone expected. The new policy affects millions of visa applicants and travelers from dozens of countries, and the implementation has been swift and unforgiving. U.S. Customs and Border Protection has already begun turning away travelers at airports, and consular offices have suspended visa processing for certain nationalities without much advanced warning. Let me break down the specifics of these new restrictions so you understand exactly what's happening. First, the country-specific travel ban has been reinstated and significantly expanded. The original travel ban from Trump's first term targeted 7 countries, but this new version covers 17 countries across multiple regions. The banned countries now include Iran, Syria, Libya, Somalia, Yemen, Sudan, North Korea, and Venezuela, which were part of the original ban. But the expanded list now adds Iraq, Lebanon, Afghanistan, Pakistan, Nigeria, Tanzania, Eritrea, Kyrgyzstan, and Myanmar. Citizens from these countries face an immediate suspension of visa issuance across nearly all categories, including tourist visas, student visas, and even some employment-based visas. The justification given by the Trump administration is national security and insufficient vetting procedures in these countries. The executive order claims that these nations either cannot or will not provide adequate information to U.S. authorities for background checks, or they pose elevated risks of terrorism or illegal immigration. However, the implementation has been controversial because it affects tens of thousands of legitimate travelers, students enrolled in U.S. universities, workers with approved petitions, and families trying to reunite with loved ones in America. Now, let's talk about what this means for different visa categories, because not all visas are affected equally. For tourist and business visitor visas, the B1 and B2 categories, the impact is severe. Nationals from the 17 banned countries cannot obtain new tourist or business visas, and existing valid visas may be revoked or flagged for additional scrutiny at ports of entry. Even if you have a 10-year multiple entry visa that was issued before this ban, you could be denied boarding by airlines or turned away at U.S. airports. Several major airlines have already begun implementing pre-flight checks to prevent affected passengers from traveling. For student visas, the F1 category, the situation is slightly more nuanced, but still devastating. Students from banned countries who are currently enrolled in U.S. universities and who are physically present in the United States can remain and continue their studies. However, if you leave the country for any reason, including emergency family situations or semester breaks, you may not be able to return. New F1 visa applications from banned countries are being rejected outright at most consulates. University officials across the country have issued urgent warnings to international students, advising them not to travel outside the U.S. under any circumstances until there is clarity on the policy. The impact on employment-based visas is equally significant. H-1B specialty occupation visas, L-1 intracompany transfer visas, and even some EB employment-based green card applications are affected. If you're from one of the banned countries and you have an approved petition but haven't received your visa stamp yet, you're now stuck in limbo. USCIS may have approved your petition, but the consulate cannot issue the actual visa. For people already in the U.S. on work visas, the advice is the same as for students. Do not leave the country because re-entry is not guaranteed even with valid documentation. Family-based immigration has not been completely spared either. Immediate relative visas for spouses, children, and parents of U.S. citizens are supposedly exempt from the ban according to the executive order language. But in practice, we're seeing significant delays and additional vetting requirements that are causing months or even years of separation for families. The administration has implemented what they call extreme vetting procedures that require multiple interviews, extensive background checks, and verification processes that can take indefinitely long. One of the most concerning aspects of these new restrictions is the expanded use of administrative processing. Even travelers from countries not on the banned list are experiencing unprecedented delays. If you're from countries like China, Russia, India, Bangladesh, or several Middle Eastern and African nations, your visa application is much more likely to be placed into administrative processing, which is essentially a black hole where your application sits for weeks or months without any updates or timeframes. Consular officers now have broader authority to request additional documentation, conduct security checks, and delay visa issuance for almost any reason they deem necessary. The travel ban also includes new restrictions on refugee admissions and asylum seekers. The refugee admission ceiling has been cut to the lowest level in decades, and asylum processing at the border has been effectively suspended for most nationalities. The administration has reinstated the Remain in Mexico policy and expanded it to include asylum seekers from additional countries. If you're fleeing persecution or violence and hoping to seek protection in the United States, the doors have essentially been closed for the foreseeable future. Another major change that's catching people off guard is the heightened scrutiny on social media and digital footprint. Visa applicants are now required to submit their social media handles for the past 5 years across all platforms. Consular officers are reviewing posts, comments, likes, and connections to determine if an applicant poses any security risk or has expressed views contrary to U.S. interests. There have been reports of visa denials based solely on social media content, including political opinions, religious posts, or even associations with certain groups or causes. This is an unprecedented level of surveillance and vetting that has civil liberties advocates deeply concerned. The economic impact of these restrictions is already being felt across multiple sectors. U.S. universities are projecting significant revenue losses as international student enrollment from affected countries drops. Technology companies that rely heavily on foreign talent are struggling to bring in skilled workers. Tourism and hospitality industries in major cities are bracing for reduced international visitors. Small businesses owned by immigrants from banned countries are facing uncertainty about their ability to travel for business or bring family members to the U.S. The ripple effects of these policies extend far beyond the individuals directly affected. So, what can you do if you're impacted by these new restrictions? First and foremost, if you're currently in the United States on any visa status and you're from one of the banned countries, do not leave unless you have absolutely no choice. Once you exit, there is no guarantee you'll be able to return, even with valid visas and documents. Consult with an immigration attorney before making any travel decisions. If you have a genuine emergency that requires international travel, legal counsel can help you understand your risks and possibly seek advanced parole or other protective measures. If you're outside the U.S. and your visa application is pending or you were planning to apply, you need to explore all possible alternatives immediately. Consider whether you qualify for a waiver based on the specific language in the executive order. Certain categories of applicants, including those with significant previous U.S. ties, students in certain STEM fields deemed critical, or individuals who can demonstrate that their entry is in the U.S. national interest, may be eligible for case-by-case waivers. However, these waivers are being granted very sparingly and require extensive documentation and often multiple interviews. Another option is to explore third country processing if you have legal status in another country that's not on the banned list. Some applicants are attempting to apply for U.S. visas from consulates in countries where they have work permits or permanent residence. This is a complex strategy that doesn't always work and may raise additional red flags with consular officers. but for some people it may be worth exploring with proper legal guidance. For families separated by these policies, there are advocacy organizations and legal aid groups working to challenge these restrictions in court. Several lawsuits have already been filed arguing that the travel ban is discriminatory, violates immigration law, and causes irreparable harm to thousands of people. While legal challenges can take years to resolve, staying connected with advocacy networks can provide support, resources, and updates on any policy changes or court decisions that might create openings for affected individuals. If you're a U.S. citizen or permanent resident with family members affected by the ban, you can contact your congressional representatives and senators to share your story and urge them to take action. While the executive branch has broad authority over immigration policy, Congress can potentially pass legislation to limit or override certain aspects of these restrictions. Public pressure and constituent advocacy have historically played a role in shaping immigration policy debates. Document everything related to your visa application, travel plans, and any communications with U.S. authorities. Keep copies of all emails, receipts, approval notices, denial letters, and interview notes. If your visa is denied or revoked, you have the right to know the reason under U.S. law. Although in practice, many denials cite vague security concerns or administrative discretion. Having thorough documentation can be crucial if you decide to reapply in the future or if policies change and you seek reconsideration. Stay informed about policy updates, because the immigration landscape is changing rapidly. Executive orders can be modified, expanded, or even challenged successfully in court. What's true today may not be true next month. Follow official government sources, including the State Department website, USCIS announcements, and Customs and Border Protection alerts, but also follow reputable immigration news outlets, legal experts, and advocacy organizations that can provide context and analysis beyond official government statements. Be extremely cautious about visa fraud and scam artists who prey on desperate people during times of policy uncertainty. There are unfortunately many fake attorneys, fraudulent visa services, and scammers promising guaranteed visas or special access in exchange for large fees. Only work with licensed attorneys who are members of the American Immigration Lawyers Association or accredited representatives recognized by the Department of Justice. Verify credentials before paying anyone for immigration services. The announcement of these new visa bans and travel restrictions represents one of the most significant shifts in U.S. immigration policy in recent years. The human cost is enormous. With families torn apart, students unable to complete their education, workers losing job opportunities, and vulnerable people denied refuge. The policy debates around immigration, national security, and America's role in the world will continue. But for those directly affected, the immediate reality is navigating an incredibly difficult and uncertain situation. This is an evolving situation, and I'll continue to provide updates as more information becomes available and as courts and policymakers respond to these changes. Your best protection right now is staying informed, seeking proper legal advice if you're affected, and making careful decisions about travel and visa applications. Don't take unnecessary risks. Don't rely on rumors or unofficial information. And don't assume that previous policies or experiences will apply under the current environment. Thank you for watching US Visa Info. If this video helped you understand these critical changes to US immigration policy, please hit that like button and subscribe to our channel so you never miss important updates that could affect your visa status or travel plans. Share this video with anyone who might be impacted by these new restrictions, because the more people know, the better prepared they can be. Drop a comment below if you have specific questions or if you've been personally affected by these policies, and I'll try to provide guidance or point you to resources that can help. Remember, immigration law is complex and constantly changing, so always verify information from official sources and consult with qualified legal professionals before making major decisions. I'll see you in the next video with more visa updates and immigration news. Stay safe, stay informed, and don't lose.